All right, good afternoon. It is 2 o'clock and we're going to get started. Welcome to the Douglas, Georgia First Time Homebuyer webinar. I hope this resource and tool and outreach of our office is beneficial to you and for you during your home buying process. Let's jump right in. Whatever community you desire to be in Douglas, we are glad to assist you from Fox Hills to Cherokee Hills, Logan Plantation, Mallard Point, the Douglas Coffin Country Club. We're Washington Realty and we're located in the heart of our community. A couple of quick disclosures. This is for educational purposes only. The content provided in this course is intended and designed, excuse me, is designed to deliver general knowledge and information on the subject matter. The material should not be considered professional advice or used as a substitute for guidance specific to your individual circumstance. Always consult with a qualified professional before making decisions based on information presented here. If your property is currently listed with a broker or realtor, please disregard this communication. It is not intended to solicit your listing or written business of other brokers. Whoops, look like I made a small little, let's get back set up. But you can see all the wealth of information that I'll be sharing with you today. A little bit about me. Well, let me go back. We are committed to fair and equal housing. We do not discriminate. To read our complete fair housing pledge and our anti-racist statement, please visit washingtonrealty.co/fair housing. I'm David Washington. I'm the managing broker of Washington Realty, and an instructor with Real Estate Educated. I have 20 years of professional real estate experience across disciplines from brokerage, which is the process of buying and selling, appraisal, inspection, education and training, development, and investment. Where the term investment is used, I do not hold a securities license, and I am referring to using real estate as an investment vehicle. Notable awards. I'm a follower of the way. I'm a top producing award-winning real estate broker, most recently Realtor of the Year. I'm a nationally profiled real estate broker, profiled in the Real Estate Bottom Line, which is a publication of the Residential Real Estate Council. These are some of the credentials that I hold. And I am an alumnus of Georgia Southern University and Thomas University. Washington Realty is my brokerage firm, and at the core of what I do and what we do is it's putting real people with real relationships in real estate. All right, after today, you'll be able to describe the home buying process, assess your readiness for home ownership, summarize your financing options, explain how to work with a real estate professional, analyze the local Douglas market, identify key home selection criteria, break down the offer and negotiation process, explain inspections and due diligence, and then prepare for closing and for home ownership. Our goal is pretty simple. It's to empower first-time buyers with confidence, engage, educate, and empower is our motto. We want to thank Brielle Belbin, who has sponsored this presentation today. She is the regional sales manager for East Alabama and Georgia with Home Warranty Inc. So when you think of home warranty during your purchase transaction, consider Brielle. All right, let's get to it. What does the home buying process look like? Right now, we're going to go over a high-level overview, and then we're going to dig deep into each component. So the home buying journey, and I like to call it a journey because that's essentially what it is. The process, you're journeying from renting possibly or living with relatives to home ownership. Home ownership is one of the most rewarding and beneficial positions that you'll ever have in life. I was pretty young when I became a homeowner, and while there while there is responsibility, it is nothing, well, it is, let me take that back. It is one of the things that I am most proud of. All right. So when we talk about home buying, we're going to break it down into phases. I think the way that I operate is when I like to take large subsets information, it is easier to break it down into smaller components to make sure that we understand it. All right. So there are 7 phases in my framework for home ownership, and we're going to go through those now. The first is the preparation phase, which is the groundwork. This is where it all begins. In this phase, we define our goals, we assess our finances, and determine our readiness for home ownership. It involves checking credit scores, setting a budget, gathering necessary financial documents, and understanding what type of home fits our lifestyle. Here, we often consult with real estate professionals to learn more about the market and to get a clear picture of the steps ahead. So, in partially what you're doing today is the preparation phase. You being here is you preparing for home ownership. All right. Number 2 is the home search phase or discovery. We're discovering our home or our future home. Once prepared, buyers start the exciting journey of finding their home. In this phase, we look and work with a real estate agent to identify neighborhoods, prioritize our needs versus our wants, and tour homes that fit our criteria. Online searches, open houses, private showings, or even visiting model homes help narrow down options until the right property is found. Number 3, the excuse me, the home loan phase or approval if we're seeking bank financing. And I'll just share 33% of Americans do not use bank financing. So 60 plus percent does. And if you're in that group, securing financing is essential. During this phase, we'll connect with a lender to obtain pre-approval. We'll compare loan options and finalize the mortgage application. The lender reviews income, assets, and credit history to determine the best loan program. Having financing in place strengthens the buyer's position when making an offer. Number 4, deal structuring phase or negotiation. To me, and as a real estate professional, this is one of my favorite parts. It's the negotiation, and it's a dance. When the perfect home is identified, the buyer, guided by their agent, submits an offer. Deal structuring includes negotiating the price, terms, and contingencies, and timelines with the seller. It's about creating an agreement that balances the buyer's needs with what the seller is willing to accept. Number 5 is the due diligence phase. So after we've crafted an acceptable offer, all right, and we have put a deal together, we move into inspecting what we expect. So basically, the due diligence phase is just checking everything. After we have that offer, like I said, we'll conduct inspections, appraisals, title searches, and review disclosures. We'll even have the contracted closing attorney pull title and confirm that there's no legal issues that affect the property. This ensures that there's no hidden issues with the home or its ownership. If problems arise, negotiations may reopen to address repairs, credits, or adjustments. Okay. From there, we move to the closing phase. Basically, it's a celebration. We finish and complete all the final outstanding paperwork, such as you'll receive the deed, you'll receive your closing disclosure and your review 3 days ahead of closing to confirm the totals. You'll know what down payment you have to make if you have to make a down payment. In Douglas is a rural development district. So depending on your credit score, you could have 100% financing. All right. But during the closing phase, we basically just settle the transaction. Number 7, the home ownership phase and just legacy. It's through home ownership, you can change the trajectory of your family's legacy. Wealth starts with real estate. In the home ownership phase is where the journey continues beyond the transaction. You move into your new home, you begin maintaining the property and building equity over time. Homeownership offers stability, tax benefits, and the opportunity to create lasting memories, but it also requires responsibilities, budgeting for upkeep, paying the mortgage, and planning for your future. All right, let's get into phase one. Here we're going to kind of take a deep dive into each of the phases to make sure that we are understanding what's taking place at each phase. All right. One thing that we have to think about when we are looking to buy real estate and be represented in a real estate transaction is brokerage relationships. Basically, what brokerage relationships are, or explained, is how are you represented or how are you treated in a real estate transaction. All right. You can be a customer, which means that you're not represented. All right. Georgia law says that if you're a customer, all that I owe you is fair dealing. Now, that's a very subjective term. What I might consider fair, you might consider unfair. What you might consider fair, I might consider unfair. Okay. A client, though, is fully represented under a buyer's brokerage agreement. So basically, what that means is the agent that is working with you is looking out for your best interest. They're making sure that you're taken care of, your needs in the process are addressed. All right. Benefits to client relationships include advocacy, negotiation, possibly confidentiality, access to advice, offer prep, and deal structuring. All right. So basically, during the preparation phase, you're learning how I want to be represented. From what I've just shared, you might say, I don't want to be a client. I might want to be a customer. If you're a first-time home buyer, I would probably discourage that because you're unfamiliar with the nuances of the market. And so I would encourage you to consider being a client. But let's dig into it a little bit more. So, as far as agency disclosure is concerned, there are several different types of ways that you can be worked with in a real estate transaction. There's seller's agency, buyer's agency, designated agency, or what's termed dual agency. All right. So, sort of like the name implies, seller agency is just where the broker represents the seller in a single agent capacity. So, they're representing one party to that transaction. That party happens to be the seller. All right. Buyer's agency is where the buyer is being represented, and it's in a single agency capacity where just that real estate professional is representing the buyer. All right. Then we have designated agency, which is where, say that you've been working with a real estate professional, all right, and you're looking to buy. You've been working with a buyer's agent. Well, then you come across one of the listings of that buyer's agent's firm that you feel like you want to buy. Well, what happens then is you need to be you want to be represented, you want to continue representation, but that buyer's agent is saying, well, the firm has it listed, that's a conflict of interest. Well, if you went and said, I want to put an offer on this property, but I want you to represent me, and I want another agent in your firm to represent the seller, they would go to the broker of record for their office, and that broker would appoint them to a designated agency situation. All right. And then there's dual agency, which is where a single agent or broker represents both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. It requires written authorization to do. I am not a fan of dual agency. Now, that's not to say, David, through the years, you've never represented one party and worked with another party during the same transaction. Yes, I have. I've represented one party and not represented another party. All right. I have never represented both parties at the same time. One was a client, the other was a customer. All right. I don't think that as a matter of practice, you can represent two people. It's almost like saying you're going to court and you're the prosecutor and the defense attorney. There's no way it can work well on any side of it. All right. So as you're having the conversation about agency and choosing the right agency, You want to have an agent that can explain the agency options. You want to be able to discuss and understand what customer and client roles look like. And then you want to actually review a buyer's brokerage agreement to see what that documentation looks like ahead of you signing anything. You want to clarify how the broker is compensated. And then an important question for buyers is, would you prefer to be treated as a customer or represented as a client in a transaction? That's only the answer to that question, only you can provide. All right. So, a couple of questions that are frequently asked. What is a buyer's brokerage agreement? A buyer's brokerage agreement is a legal contract in Georgia that establishes a formal working relationship between a buyer and a licensed real estate agent or brokerage. It authorizes the agent to represent the buyer's interest in a real estate transaction, just like a listing agreement does for sellers. All right. Is the agreement exclusive? An exclusive buyer's brokerage agreement is exclusive, meaning that you agree to work with one specific agent or brokerage for a certain period of time. That agent becomes your representative and is obligated to act in your best interest throughout the buying process. And let me say this here just as an aside. When I look at exclusive versus non-exclusive or customer versus client, part of what conversation you'll have with that agent is how committed do you want them to be to you and how committed they want you to be to them. Now, I'll use me. I'm a 20-year veteran real estate broker. My time is very valuable. I do not give my time to customers. All right. A client can sort of dictate my schedule to a certain degree because I represent them and I'm looking out for their best interests. So I need to make myself available to them as they need me and as I'm handling their business. I kind of treat it like akin to how most people think about dating relationships. A customer arrangement or a non-exclusive situation is akin to just dating, right? And there's nothing wrong with dating. But for somebody like me, I'm going to require the commitment of an exclusive commitment. All right, just to kind of make that make sense. Part of what's in the agreement is the scope of services that your agent will provide, the duration of the agreement, how the agent will be compensated. Typically and historically, real estate professionals have been compensated traditionally through the seller. All right. There have been some significant practice changes within the last few years. Now the buyer is responsible for that compensation. However, that buyer can instruct us to negotiate with the seller to cover that buyer obligation. Okay. Your responsibilities as a buyer, loyalty, providing truthful information, and then the agreement may also outline how the agreement can be terminated or what happens if a buyer or if you buy a property without the agent's involvement. All right. Most real estate agents will go over in their internal onboarding or consultation process how that will be treated at that time. All right. And then why you should sign an agreement is if you want to be fully represented and have loyal representation where clear expectations are established and outlined, a buyer's agency agreement is how that's done. All right. Partly what happens in the prep phase as well is you're going to survey the market. You're going to we all do it and we might not know what we're doing. We'll get on Zillow and love the $1 million house. We'll get on Zillow and we'll say, hey, I like this house. How much is it? We're assessing the market when we do that. That's a part of the prep phase. Okay. When we're thinking, how much house can I afford? Or can I afford to live in neighborhood X? We're doing what's referred to as self-qualifying. Excuse me. But part of self-qualifying is understanding the numerical calculations for determining how much house we can actually afford. All right. And how we do that is through understanding front end and back end ratios. All right. Monthly gross income versus divided by total housing payment is what gives us that ratio. All right. So we took it when we look at our total housing payment, we're looking at principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. We're looking at private mortgage insurance if necessary, then divided by our gross monthly income. All right. So that's what our house payment would be. For our debt to income or the back end ratio, we're looking at what all of our recurring monthly debts would be divided by our gross monthly income. All right. So we're looking at gross and total as far as that back end ratio. All right. So that's going to include student loans, credit cards, or any other bill that you're responsible for. Now we're going to touch on financing for a bit. We'll get deeper into it in a couple of modules in the following modules. But right now I want you to know there's 4 primary types of loans in the marketplace. Conventional, FHA, VA, or USDA. Conventional is usually less restrictive and requires a higher credit score. FHA is a lower down payment loan, only requiring 3.5% down payment. If you are buying a condo, in Douglas, we don't have really any condos, but if you are buying a condo, the condo must be FHA approved. Okay. VA is 100% financing. There's 0 down payment. It requires eligibility if you are a veteran. And then when we say veteran, we're saying a member of the armed forces or the National Guard that meets the qualifying requirements. You can take advantage of that loan type with no PMI or down payment. And then there's USDA. In Douglas and Coffee County, we are in a rural development district. So we can do or take advantage of a USDA loan where we have 0 down payment. We will have PMI, but it'll drop off after 20% equity is achieved. And then it is location specific. So all of Coffee County is a rural development district, so we are good as far as location is concerned. And there are some separate fees as far as a funding fee that's charged to the transaction when we look to do that. All right. Anytime that we are having a purchase conversation, it is always wise for us to know and consider all the available money options that exist. So make a note of this website. It's downpaymentresourcecenter.com. There you can look and inquire as to what down payment money is available in the marketplace and have that ready to assist you as you make the decision toward homeownership. All right. Most people, regardless of income, a lot of people believe that down payment programs are for lower income people, and that is not the case. Maybe when they first came about, they were, but now, based off some recent data, more than 80% of Americans qualify in some type, shape, or form or fashion for down payment assistance. So if it's for you to take advantage of, make sure you're taking advantage of it. All right. Another part of understanding that's complementary to self-qualifying and understanding is market awareness. You have to know where the market is and what's going on to figure out how it is for you to jump into. All right. So we're going to explain the current market. Presently, we are in a balanced market that is trending hard to a buyer's market. So we're right on the cusp of moving out of a balanced market into a buyer's market. What does that mean? That means buyers right now have the advantage. All right. Now, if we were to break that down even further, just to kind of not go so technical with you, but to just make sure that you're understanding what that metric actually means, is when we're looking at certain information, for example, whether it's a buyer's market or a seller's market, when the months of inventory exceed 6 months, we are in a buyer's market. All right. When it's closer to 2 or 3 months, we're in a seller's market. Okay. So 2 months to sell a house or a month to sell a house is super fast. So that lets us know sellers are kind of running the show. If it's taken 6 months to sell the house, that's kind of a long time. And that lets us know that we are in the driving seat for the most part, as far as buying is concerned, when it's longer than 6 months. All right. It's important to set realistic expectations about pricing, speed, and competition. Now, I do want to stress this, and I want to make sure that you understand it. We are in a new normal as far as the market is concerned. What has happened previously and prior has no bearing on what's going on today. All right. The price points that we're in today, we've never really seen before, but that's the new normal. All right. We're going to go into a little bit more information as far as what's trending locally, but I want to stress that fact. All right. So when you're crafting offers and offer strategies, you have to keep the market in mind. And if you're working with a truly qualified professional, they're going to give you all the ins and outs, just like I'm sharing with you now, so that you're in the driving seat and that you know what they know in order to craft the best offer to win as far as the purchase is concerned. All right. So when we talk about markets, analysis is in arrears. All right. So we're getting ready to end September. This will update. I'll update the analysis once October starts for September, because it's always a month in arrears as far as the data reporting. All right. So as of the most recent reporting, which is August 2025, we have 6.42 months of inventory. The sold to list price ratio is 88.5%. The median days on market are 43, and the median sold price is $242,500. So let's break down a little bit of this information. What does the sold to list price ratio explain? Well, that tells us that if a property is listed at $100,000, it right now typically is selling for $88,500, or 88.5% of wherever it's listed. Now, I want to share this because this is some that has some play on it that you have to be careful for. If it is listed over the market, or if it's overpriced, in other words, even at overpriced, it's selling for 88.5% of list price. All right. So you want to definitely have your agent see when it's overpriced to try to get the purchase price at what it at 88% right now of what it should have been listed at prior to it being overpriced, or in spite of it being overpriced. Okay. All right. So the preparing phase action steps are to get pre-approved. Check your credit, review your credit report, dispute errors, and pay down debt where you can. Save for a down payment. All right. Aim for at least 3 to 20%, not 20%. 20% is more in line with the conventional that I was sharing with you. If we're doing USDA at 0%, but you still want to have a 1 to 2 or 3% in the bank, just depending, because the bank might require you to have some cash reserves just to demonstrate that you can make the mortgage payment. All right. Research closing cost averages, and then ask your agent about market conditions. Identify your must-haves, your nice-haves, define location, features, and budget priorities. All right, let's get into what some people term the fun phase, and what some people term the stressful phase. It's the home search phase. So during this phase, you're going to basically communicate with your representative what exactly you want or need in a home. All right, what we need in a home all varies based on our unique personalities and our unique lifestyle decisions and choices. This is what your agent will typically do for you. They'll set up you a custom property portal where they'll tailor and share properties with you that meet your criteria as far as price range, location, whether that's zip code or neighborhood. So for example, if you say, I want to be in Bay Meadows, or you say, I want to be in Touchton Woods, I would set that up to where I share with you every property that came on the market or was on the market in Touchstone Woods or Bay Meadows. All right. Then if you further say I have to have certain features in a property, it has to have a fenced yard. It has to be on an acre plus. It has to be on 10 acres. I'll go in and create the list of those properties based off what's available for you to review and have access to. Now, I do want to stress this because it's in markets, there are submarkets, all right, and there could even be submarkets of submarkets. So in Douglas, for example, we have to be careful about being too, I don't want to use the word picky, but trying to be too narrow in our search. Okay. Because what happens is if I say, for example, my price range, the median price range was 242,500. If I say I want to be at 242,500 and I want to be at Touchstone Woods and I want a 4 to 5 bedroom home, there's nothing on the market right now that's going to meet that criteria because I've narrowed it down too far. All right. What I encourage is to, once you create the list of what you desire in a property, actually get out and ride neighborhoods and areas and talk to your agent and actually listen to your agent. Because sometimes I'll use an example. Several years back, I sold my home and was looking at the purchase of a new home. And I really liked the neighborhood, Green Tree Lakes. And so out near Slash Pine was a brick house that was, I thought, perfect for me. And so I had a client that was looking and everything that her family and her had shared with me in what they needed in a home, it checked off. Well, she would not walk through the house. I had walked through because, of course, I had looked to consider purchasing it. And so I'm saying, I love it. It checks all the boxes. And so from what she's saying, I'm saying it makes sense. On paper, she just, I don't want to see it. So one Friday, I ended up taking her to lunch and I said, well, look, you're with me. Let's go look at this house. And she said, I really don't want to, but let's go look at it. Well, we went and looked at it and she ended up buying it. I probably should have bought it, but she ended up buying it and she loves it. And it's a wonderful house. But sometimes once you've communicated to the agent that's helping you, and we're in and out of these houses, whether it's showings or brokers opens, we have more insight and understanding into what some of these houses look like and how they flow. And then based off your criteria, we know that's something that might fit. So sometimes when we're sharing that with you, um, listen a little bit so that we can help you get inside your home. This is a sample just to kind of give you a baseline of what a home buyer survey looks like. So what is a home buyer survey or needs analysis, you say? It's a simple questionnaire that's designed to uncover your priorities, your preferences, your must-haves, so that you can focus on the home search on what matters most. All right. Our home search action steps: tour homes with your agent. Now, this is going to be important that I share this with you. If you are in an exclusive agency agreement, all right, with a buyer's agent, you want to make sure that you are touring homes with your agent. Don't just pop up at a broker open house. I'm sorry, at a builder's model home, or don't pop up at a FSBO. Go through your agent to coordinate those appointments. All right. Compare properties side by side. It's important that as you're walking through these properties, that you're evaluating them to make sure they check different boxes or confirming that they don't check boxes. And I'll say this too: when you establish your home search criteria, know that that's not something that you're just held to. It's a starting conversation that might shift. You might walk through a property and say, well, David, I thought I wanted granite countertops. And I'll use me. I'm not a fan of granite countertops. I'm not a fan of quartz countertops. I actually, you might say that, I'm a little different, but I prefer more of a Formica style countertop. I just do. It's easier to clean than me, and it just works for me. So as you're walking through property, you're gonna have those situations, and when you experience those situations, just make sure that you're readjusting your criteria with your agent to make sure they're out there doing the work best that they can do for you. All right. Research neighborhoods, commute times. I like to always encourage checking a neighborhood at different times of the day, morning, so that you can see the school traffic, midday or lunchtime, to see if anybody's out that shouldn't be out. You know, most of us work and have a work schedule. If there's too many people in the neighborhood that are out at unique times, that could present a concern. Now, it might be perfect, you know, they might be whatever, but just evaluate the neighborhood, rush hour traffic coming home, go check it out and see what you should expect. I do want to stress this: as your real estate agent or as a real estate agent, it is very important that you are aware of the following. Um, Real estate professionals can't comment on neighborhoods. You can't ask me, well, who lives here? People. Um, you know, you're not going to even ask me, would you live here? I might not. I'm not buying right now, right? There's some resources that your agent can and will provide to you to where you can independently make those decisions on your own. All right. One, you establish the criteria for schools, for crime tolerance, for whatever. But we'll share with you how and where to go to pull that information. I always encourage, if you are concerned about the crime in an area, or if there is crime in an area, call the sheriff's department. All right. Call the city police department. If you have friends at 911, ask them how many calls come through out here. You know, um, the schools, go talk to the school board. Right. Also, if schools are important, right, and they are, you need to independently verify the school that goes with the property. All right. So if you're saying, I want my child to go to Ambrose, you need to go to the school board, and when we select on a property, and independently confirm that this house will go to Ambrose. I'm sorry, I think I said Satilla. Will go to Satilla. I'm not sure why Ambrose is on the mind today, but vice versa. If it's Ambrose, you know, Ambrose is a good school. A buddy of mine is a principal out there. If Ambrose is where you want to go to school, you just need to make sure that you're in the district that goes to Ambrose. All right. And then stay within your budget. Once you establish your budget, don't overextend yourself. And I'll say this too: when the lender gives you the pre-approval, that is not where you have to be. You know your spending, you know what life you want to live. I like to get up and go. All right. House poor is a thing, and don't get your mortgage so high that you can't afford to continue living. If you want to get up, if you're that type of person like me, you want to get up on a random Friday and run to Jacksonville for the weekend, or run to Atlanta or Miami, you want to have the funds to do that and not be limited by a mortgage payment. All right. All right. Phase 3 is the home loan phase. All right. There are some amazing lenders that are in the marketplace. And if you ever have questions or need a referral to one, I am glad to make that referral. And I'll tell you, just me to you, excuse me, that I am one of those people that's kind of really serious about, excuse me, process efficiencies. So the lenders that I work with, I regularly make sure that they're on their game and that they're actually handling business and addressing business as they should, or else I'll pivot and go in another direction. So as we talk about home loans, I just wanted you to know that out of the gate. All right. So how will you pay? Earlier in this presentation, I shared with you that 35% of Americans paid in cash. All right. When you're using the services of a real estate professional and you are looking to pay cash, it's going to require what we term as a proof of funds or verification of deposits. So that's basically a letter from your bank or a copy of your bank statement showing that you have the ability to purchase that property in cash. Now, this is where we're going to go back to the exclusive nature of a buyer's brokerage agreement if you are in a single agency capacity. You want to ensure that in writing, it specifies the confidential nature of your transaction. All right, I'm going to say that again. You want to make sure that in writing, it specifies the confidential nature of your transaction, especially when you're dealing with cash. Okay, why do you say that, David? Well, right now we have a new series of real estate professionals, and I love my industry, and I always want the best for those in my industry and want to encourage them to be better, that will share a pre-approval letter or share sensitive information. The general public has no business knowing that a client has $500,000 in cash in the bank. Well, you have some people that have never seen an account, 6 or 7 figures, that might share that on social media just for clout, and that can present some real life situations, all right, and concerns. So that's just my little rant on that. But financing, if you desire to do financing, it'll require pre-approval or pre-underwriting. Right now, we can pre-underwrite a loan. If you get a desktop approval, or what's referred to as a desktop approval, it's basically where the lender has done everything and got an automatic decision that you're good to go. All right. Sometimes they might have to do what's referred to as a manual underwrite, and that's usually when there's some outstanding situations or factors that they need to look into. All right. But we're going to look at the loan programs again and go into a little bit more detail. So before I share with you that conventional was for stronger borrowers, if you have a credit score under 580, okay, you're not going to necessarily qualify for a conventional loan. You could qualify for an FHA loan at the 3.5%, right? If you have significant savings, all right? VA, you don't actually have to have a score. You do have to have income, and you can get approved that way. USDA, you do need to have a solid score for USDA. And then with some government funded down payment programs, you will have to have a score above 650. In the financing realm, as far as down payment is concerned, you could receive gift funds, but you need to make the lender aware of your desire to do so upfront and right away so that they can handle all that needs to be handled in that regard. All right. So how do I get pre-approved for a mortgage? You'll complete a loan application and submit documents such as your pay stubs, W-2s, tax returns, and bank statements. The lender will review your credit score, income, assets, and debts to determine how much you can afford. So going back to qualifying, that's where they're looking at your debt to income to figure out how much house you can actually afford. What credit score do I need to qualify for a home loan? Most lenders require a minimum score of 620 for conventional loans. FHA loans may, and let me go back and say that's for a new conventional loan. A regular conventional loan requires typically a higher score. FHA loans may allow scores as low as 580, but higher scores typically get better interest rates and loan terms. All right. As far as down payment, it depends on the loan type. Conventional can be as low as 3 to 5% for a new conventional. A standard conventional is going to be 20%. FHA is going to be a minimum of 3.5%, and then VA and USDA is 0% if eligible. What are the debt to income ratios and how do they affect time? DTI is a percentage of your monthly income that goes toward debts. Most lenders look for a DTI of 43% or less, including your future mortgage payment. So going back to when we do the qualifying, you would go in and make that calculation just like I've got it by including all the information on each side. And as long as you're under 43%, you should be fine. Understanding transaction cost. So when we're purchasing real estate, we have some expenses. I like to try to communicate it this way: is what the purchase price of the property is not the purchase price of the property. It's going to be more. It's going to be in excess of that amount. When you go to Walmart, if you go to Walmart, if you go to Publix and shop at Publix, that's where you buy your groceries at. When you go into Publix, um, your item might be $15. We're going to have what's called taxes on top of that, and that's what you're going to pay. The purchase price of the item with taxes and other fees is going to be your total expense. Real estate's no different. You have some expenses that will be in excess of the purchase price that you have to be prepared for. You've got closing costs, and then from closing costs, you've got some that are out of pocket or what's referred to as prepaid, and then some are paid at closing. Some out of pocket closing costs might be your home inspections. All right. If you are in a non-municipal water and sewer serviced community, you might have further expenses as far as a well inspection or a septic inspection. Your appraisal, HOA documents. Now in Douglas, we don't have many truly organized HOAs where we have to worry about HOA documents. But in some areas, usually larger areas, you have an expense for actually requesting documents that govern the community from the community. They charge you a fee. And then earnest money is typically, or historically, I should say, 1% of the purchase price. Now, later as we get to crafting offers, that earnest money we'll talk about a little bit more because it can be used in crafting offers that can really get the attention of a seller to win you out ahead of some other offers. All right. Then closing costs that are typically paid at closing are attorney's fees, title prep, and of course your broker's fees. All right. Earnest money is held in escrow and credited at closing. It demonstrates you are a serious buyer, as well as that your credit and financial readiness are in line to purchase the property. All right. So our action steps. This is what a closing disclosure looks like. So, and I'm sorry, that was supposed to be a loan estimate, but it looks similar. The loan estimate you're given at the time that you start the home financing part, and it's just a summary of the various charges. You can shop around for services like title insurance, homeowners insurance, closing attorney or escrow agent, and then a lender as far as interest rate and lender fees. You can negotiate the removal of what is termed junk fees as far as like courier, email, or admin fees. And then you can ask about lender pay closing costs. Right now in the market that we're in, lenders are offering lender pay closing cost. So it's always worth the question to find out if that's something that's doable for you. And then explore down payment and closing cost assistance. I'm gonna always hammer on that because I feel like it is an underused benefit that a lot of people can benefit from and don't. All right. So let's move into phase 4, the deal structuring phase. This is where I, or whoever your agent is, gets to really demonstrate to you their ability to negotiate. I'm working on a situation right now where on a new construction or new build, out the gate, I got 40 to 45,000 some odd dollars off of what the builder was asking. All right. That's amazing. Now that's rare. But that happens, or situations like that happen because one, you have a professional that cares to negotiate. All right. If you don't have a real estate broker or agent that's negotiating and fighting for you and advocating for you, you need to run. All right. Because my client is they're a savvy business family. And so they know and can see and appreciate the work that I've done in getting that off. And that's real money off. We're not talking about this is real money, real money. That's a lower payment for them, right? they're not paying mortgage money on that $40,000 because I've cut that $40,000 off the purchase price. So deal structuring is super important. When we're crafting a deal, what does that look like? What should we focus on? What and why does it matter? Well, it matters because where you buy affects where you sell. Um, I'll tell you and just share some insight with you. It is always imperative that you advocate for you and that the people that you're paying to advocate for you as well. So in the crafting of the deal and the structuring of the deal is how that advocating works. All right. So when we're making an offer, um, how we can use earnest money. Well, let me show you this is what a purchase and sale agreement looks like. It's where we outline the various terms in writing, right? And I want to stress this to you. A offer or a purchase agreement should always be in writing. You're going to have some agents that say, oh, I might could do a verbal. Don't ever allow an agent to do a verbal. All right. Because there can be ambiguity in that. There can be confusion in that. And there can be, oh, they didn't make an offer in that. And it could be a situation where you really wanted that property and there's no paper trail. And then it becomes a he said, she said, right? When you're trying to hold people accountable for what they did or didn't do, always ensure that the offer is in writing, which means you'll receive a copy, you'll sign a copy, and return it for that to be presented. All right. But as you can see here, in a purchase and sale agreement, we're just simply identifying the property that we're seeking to purchase. We're including an offer price or a purchase price. Where you see number 3, asking for closing costs or not. We're selecting a time frame that we desire to close. All of these are what we call terms, all right? And how we position these terms can affect our success or failure in a transaction or in structuring a deal. So for example, when I have a client that comes and says, David, I want to be in this house and I don't have to be in there tomorrow, but I want the house, I want it at this price. Part of what that gives me in creating offer strategy for them is saying, okay, one thing that could be a variable item is when they take possession. Well, if it's somebody that's been in a house for 30 or 40 years and they have a lot of stuff, they might need more time to be out of it, and they might prefer to have that time after they close and receive their proceeds where they can either buy a new property or covering moving expenses or storage expenses as they transition out of the old house into the new house. So sometimes by simply saying, I'll give you 30 or 45 days post closing, right, can get us the purchase price that we want and the other terms that we're comfortable with, and we win the property, right? Not all, not all sellers are only focused on price. All right. We all have different situations in our lives that affect different things. And we have to be, um, one, we have to care to ask, what is a priority to you? And when we ask, listen when they respond. All right. All right. For the deal structuring, our action steps are to craft a competitive offer. Your agent, if you are paying them, they should be benefiting you in some way, shape, or form. All right. They should know how to craft a competitive offer, and you should be able to inspect what you expect and check behind them to make sure that's what they're doing. So one way that we do that is you can ask for an updated market analysis at the time that you are thinking of making an offer so that you can see what the market is encouraging as far as the price. All right. Request seller concessions. I don't care if you don't need it. In this market, it's customary. Ask for it. Increase the purchase price to offset concessions if necessary. So if the seller and you have some that say, no, I'm not paying any concessions, you can go up on price subject to the appraised value being confirmed. That way that you have that and you're not having to come out of your pocket with that closing cost money. Okay. And then consider an end of the month closing. Well, David, why would I do that? I want to be in there the first. Well, if you close at the end of the month, typically you're going to have a full month plus some before you make your first payment. So you normally have, if you close at the end of the month, theoretically you could have almost 2 months of a gap time before you'll make your first payment. All right. Negotiate repairs and credit if necessary, and after the inspection, decide whether to request fixes or financial concessions. If a seller says that it's work that needs to be done that you feel like it's significant, back out of the deal. All right. All right. Number 5, the due diligence phase. So this is where what that last that I just shared with you, as far as if the seller says they don't want to fix something, this is where we determine what needs to be fixed and what doesn't. Always inspect what you expect, trust but verify. All right, I'm gonna say that again. Inspect what you expect, trust but verify. All right. As a professional, you might have that agreement with me, and I'm going to honor that agreement, but you're still going to check behind me to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And through presentations like this and understanding of this type of material, you'll know what to look for in order to properly supervise whatever professional you choose to work with. All right. So when we're inspecting the property, we're completing a home inspection. We're completing a pest inspection, or what's referred to as a wood infestation report or termite report. All right. Now, it's strongly encouraged, but it's not always required. If you are using VA financing, it is required for VA financing, but some of the other loan programs don't require it. We are in the South. It's not when, it's not if, but when we'll all have termites. I own a lot of real estate. Termites move. All right. An appraisal. The bank will order an appraisal, and that's going to be independent verification of the value of the property. But I do want to stress this: an appraisal is a estimate of value or an opinion of value as of a certain day. All right. So while we rely on it, we don't want to have it be the end all be all. As far as the transaction, there's some outcomes to where if a property underappraises, we can do certain things because we'll always have a financing contingency. I'm sorry, an appraisal contingency. But then we want to be in a structured position where the property appraises for more than our contracted position. All right. Title work, we want to inspect that. We want an attorney to review the title and evaluate the title, because one, we want to be able to have title insurance, but then two, we want to make sure there's no legal issues with the property. All right. Loan underwriting and approval. While we have our financing agreement in place, we want to make sure that we are fully underwriting and getting our final approval so that we're good to go when that financing contingency expires. All right. A survey. The reason we would get a survey is if we just want to know where the lines are, or if the closing attorney can't put the property on the ground. All right. So a survey is going to tell us the point of beginning to where. And based off the reading of that and the attorney's understanding of that, you'll know if the property is sitting on the ground or if it's somewhere else. So they might require an updated survey if it's not sitting on the ground to make sure that it is. All right. HOA and condo documents. Like I said, that really doesn't apply to us here in Douglas, but I like to include it just because you may decide you don't want to be in Douglas, you want to go to the big city, and at least that information has been shared with you so that you know what to look for. In an HOA situation or a condo situation, you'll get those documents and you review those documents as far as the organization and stability of the condo association and what their rules are. All right. And then insurance. You want to make sure that you have hazard insurance. Life happens every day. Helene showed us that not only do you want to have insurance, but you want to make sure that you have some solid insurance. There have been several companies, and I'm not going to name them here in this format, but several that people identified as being where they thought they had the best. Not so good. I know people that are just now getting checks a year later from certain carriers. All right. And then home warranty, CBRL, right? We talked about that, and that's important. That's important because a home warranty can help cover those systems. So our insurance covers the hazards, fire, flood, possibly, depending on your rider. That warranty is if your refrigerator goes out or if your air conditioner stops. And so as a first-time home buyer, that's important. All right. So we want to make sure with all of our inspections that the inspections and the evaluations are positive and that the contingencies are cleared. All right. So with due diligence, our action steps are, of course, to schedule a home inspection. I'll tell y'all this, guys, I have been in the real estate space for about 20 years and across disciplines. I'm an investor. I buy and sell a lot of property, and I don't care if I buy it for $5,000, and I have bought some for $5,000, brick houses. I get a home inspection. All right, because I want to know what's what. All right. Review the lender ordered appraisal. Confirm that the value aligns with the purchase price. All right. If not, there's some things that can happen to either back out of the transaction or possibly reduce the price to what that appraised amount is. All right. You always want to confirm that the title is clear, and then, if necessary, revisit concessions. Excuse me. A couple of situations that I want to take a minute to tell you to watch out for and make sure that you avoid. There are situations that you need to prepare for in just real estate, period. When you're looking to buy real estate, there can be multiple offer scenarios and situations. All that is where multiple people are interested in the same property. So you have to, and your agent has to craft an offer that stands and separates you from the rest. All right. The example that I just gave you previously was the low appraisal. If the low appraisal came in lower, we want to negotiate that price down to get the property at the appraised value or lower. All right. If there are delays, and they're very possible, HOAs are notorious for being difficult. You see it in the news all the time, but they have been so difficult in real estate that they would not want to provide us through the years with the actual documentation that we needed for clients to make informed decisions, to the point that the Georgia legislature had to step in and create rules that said they had to do certain things within certain time frames, and they couldn't charge anything crazy to do that. And then the seller refusal to repair. That is a real life situation in real estate. They may say, I'm not going to fix it. And in those instances, I advise a lot of my clients to say, I'm not going to buy it. All right. Because the in meeting in the middle, in the meeting of the minds, if I'm going to purchase your property, I want to purchase something, unless my focus is to buy property that is in need of repair. I don't want to have to go in and repair something that the seller knows needs repairs, but they're just choosing not to repair. Steer clear of that. All right. And then don't pull your credit. Once you start the process, don't pull your credit. Don't Zelle, don't Venmo in and out, especially if you're financing, because it can create complications. All right. And then some avoidable mistakes are not establishing a budget, changing jobs mid-process, buying furniture before closing. That kind of goes to the credit pool. And then not hiring a qualified realtor, making offers on FSBOs without representation, and not getting a home inspection. All right. Phase 6 is the closing phase. This is the fun part. This is where you really get to celebrate. You get to sign your papers, you get to receive your keys, and you get to move into your home. All right. It's a major step. It's a major milestone. Some action steps. This is the closing disclosure. You'll receive this 3 days prior to closing. It outlines what the loan amount is, what the interest rate is, and then what the monthly payment would be. And then down at the bottom, you can see where it says cost at closing. It'll show you what the total closing costs are, and then what the cash to close is. All right. So you always want to review your final closing disclosure, confirming all concessions are applied correctly. Verify credit for any prepaid expenses. So where you pay for that home inspection outside of closing, but you've got, or I was able to get you so much money in closing cost, you want to submit that bill to closing so that you could be refunded that money at closing based off the closing cost contribution. All right. You always want to schedule a final walkthrough. So typically the day before or 2 days before closing, you'll get with me or your agent, and we'll walk through that property to confirm its physical condition, prior to us actually signing and taking possession. All right. That way, if there's any issues that need to be addressed, we're addressing them before we actually own the property and taking possession. And then make sure that when you are coming to closing it and all of this, if you're with a broker that is experienced, will guide you through, make sure that you're bringing the following items to closing. Valid IDs, typically you'll need two forms. That's going to be like your passport or your driver's license, or a driver's license and a credit card, something that two items that are issued that have your name on it. One has to be a photo ID, though, that's government issued. Certified funds, in Georgia, above certain amounts, that's going to be required to be wired in. And then your review and acceptance of the closing disclosure 3 days prior to closing. All right. And then phase 7 is home ownership. You own the property now. It's yours. All right. There's still responsibility. You have to make the payment if you financed. You have to keep the lawn up. You have to, if there's a storm like Helene, you have to get that repaired. All right. It's on you now. Right. All right. Some of the home ownership action steps are, as soon as you get in there, change the lock, update security codes. If you need cameras, put in cameras. Set up and establish your utilities and services, water, power, internet, waste collection. File for homestead exemption if applicable. If it is your primary residence, all right, file for homestead exemption. You'll do that at the, it's not the courthouse anymore, but the county administration building in the tax assessor's office. You'll file that paperwork. Create a maintenance schedule. When you own property, you have to keep it up. You have to maintain it. Don't let it run down, because as you allow it to run down, you're allowing your equity position to run down as well. And you don't want to do that. Your property should appreciate, but as part of that appreciation, you want to make sure, or you need to make sure, that you're maintaining the property. Build an emergency fund. So as you are owning the property, you're going to have that appreciation, and from that appreciation, that equity position, but continue saving, because between the two, owning real estate can change the trajectory of your life. If you want to start a business, if you want to invest, if you want to pay for your children to go to private school, you can do that from an equity position and a savings position, because you own real estate. And then stay in touch with me or your agent, because we essentially become a resource for you lifelong. I for one, I send out notices to my clients as far as when they need to file homestead. Their first year after they close, they get a letter saying, "Hey, you can write off these closing costs," and I give them a copy of their closing disclosure, so they have that to provide to their CPA or tax professional to make sure they're getting that benefit. All right. And then, as a free gift for you taking the time to share with me today, if you will scan that QR code, I have got the Homebuyer's Handbook for you and some tools and resources that can help further prepare you for the process. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time. I have taken about 8 more minutes, and I'm going to respect your time, but I appreciate you taking the time to learn with me today, and be sure to take advantage of some other consumer outreach that we'll have coming in the future. If you have any questions, I'm glad to answer any questions that you might have. And if not, I'll see you next time.